This is an NBC News special report. Here's Lester Holt.
Good evening. We're coming on the air with breaking news of multiple attacks on U.S. forces in Iraq. Iran state news agencies saying that Iran is behind the attacks. Let's get right to NBC's Richard Engel. He's live in Iraq. Richard, what can you tell us?
So the Iranian official media says that the Revolutionary Guard is claiming responsibility. They also are putting out video, which they say are some of the rockets that were fired apparently from Iran at a U.S. air base here in Iraq, the Al-Assad air base. Military sources say that they took at least 6 rounds of what they described as rockets initially, that soldiers on the base took shelter in bunkers. If you look at the video, you can see at least 3 projectiles and hear the distinctive noise of what sound like jet engines. This would be a significant escalation. U.S. bases in this country sometimes come under attack from small rockets, but not long-range or medium-range ballistic missiles fired from Iran. The Iranian news agencies are also saying they're issuing threats, not just claiming responsibility, saying that there could be more attacks to come if the United States responds, and that Americans, they say, are advised to return to their bases and return home for their safety. So Iran definitely claiming credit and linking this explicitly to the killing of the General Qasem Soleimani, saying that this is part of Iran's revenge. They are putting out hashtags on social media saying decisive revenge, Lester.
And Richard, what do we know about the American presence at that base? How many, what the mission of the troops is there?
It is a very large base, and actually right now we can hear some helicopters above us right now. There were some explosions that we heard here in Erbil, where I am in northern Iraq. We are still trying to figure out what that was. So far, no word of casualties at the Assad air base, but I can tell you that a lot of military sources that I've been speaking to are very busy right now. They do not appear to be answering their phones. They're clearly working this story. The White House says that the president has been informed and is meeting with national security advisors. Not sure if this is over, if this was an initial assault, if this was Iran testing the waters, but it certainly got a lot of people's attention here with a rocket attack that Iran is claiming from the Revolutionary Guard, saying that it is part of revenge for the killing of the commander of Iranian Black Ops, Qasem Soleimani.
Any word on any casualties from this?
So far, we have not heard any word of casualties, only that troops were taking shelter in this base. It is a very large base. It is quite far, about 200 miles from the Iranian border. These bases are full of places where troops can take cover. So it would be very difficult for these kind of missiles, which do not have any kind of significant guidance system, as far as we know, to hit anything specific. But as far as we know, no casualties, and we're not aware of damage. There may have been damage. We just frankly don't know at this stage.
All right. Richard Engel in Iraq. We'll ask you to stand by. We want to go to the Pentagon now. Correspondent Courtney Cubie. Courtney, what are you hearing from U.S. military sources about the size and nature of this attack?
So we're hearing so far that there were at least 3 separate barrages of incoming. But what remains unclear is exactly what it was. The original reports were that they were rockets, that the U.S. military there on this base were hunkered down. They were in bunkers for this original round, which was reported as 6 rockets. But then the incoming kept coming. There was another round that came through. That was when things became a little bit fuzzier, Lester, is exactly what it was that was coming in. You know, Richard mentioned the distance between Al-Assad and Iran. The military there were saying that they believed that this was coming in from the direction of Iran. Was it actually from inside Iran or not? That would be the big difference here. Also, what would be a huge difference is whether, in fact, these were rockets or ballistic missiles, as there has been some reporting on media, specifically Iranian media, that these could be ballistic missiles. Now, there would be no mistaking for the individuals on the base whether if these were rockets, especially the kind of Katyusha rockets that we see in these attacks on installations there in Iraq, versus a ballistic missile. The damage would be significantly different there, Lester. So far, though, the U.S. military is still, they say they are trying to figure out exactly what happened. The military there are still locked down and hunkered down, and we're waiting to hear whether there was what exactly may have been hit and whether there were any casualties, Lester.
And Courtney, this base, I believe, has been visited by President Trump in the past. Do you know what kind of security measures are in place? What sort of shelters are there?
Tremendous. I mean, it's a sprawling, enormous base out really in the middle of the desert in Iraq, west of Baghdad. This installation, as all of the ones around Iraq since the death of Qasem Soleimani, they have been at a heightened state of alert. But it is an enormous airfield. It's a place, as you mentioned, President Trump went there. One of the reasons that kind of base would be visited by a distinguished visitor, a VIP like President Trump, is that they have the ability to provide more security. It's not the area is not congested like the air bases down, like the base down in Baghdad, with a sprawling city around it. So they provides more protection. I mean, candidly, just being able to launch something into that base and target something would be more difficult because it is so spread out.
Courtney Kube at the Pentagon. We'll ask you to stand by as well. Let's go to NBC's Kristen Welker at the White House, where reaction is just coming in. Kristen, what's the word from the White House?
Press Secretary Stephanie Grisham, Lester, just released this statement moments ago. Let me read it to you. She says, quote, "We are aware of the reports of attacks on U.S. facilities in Iraq. The president has been briefed and is monitoring the situation closely and consulting with his national security team. I can tell you that there are still a number of officials who are here inside the West Wing, clearly monitoring this situation very closely at this hour, Lester." Now, this comes on the heels of a day in which the president and his top officials here have really put forth a full court press, trying to build the case for why they say it was necessary to take out Iran's top general. President Trump saying that the move saved lives, referring to him as a monster. The national security advisor earlier today saying that he was planning attacks against U.S. diplomats and also against U.S. facilities. The defense secretary saying those attacks could come within days. Now, Democrats, lawmakers have been highly critical of the move, saying that it has only escalated tensions in the region. And they've said that the president, that this administration has yet to really put forth evidence for why this was such an imminent situation that they were addressing. We know that lawmakers, top congressional leaders, were briefed today, Lester. They have been very tight-lipped about what they learned at that briefing. The full Congress is going to meet with top officials, including the Secretary of State and the Secretary of Defense tomorrow. And they are going to want answers to that critical question, Lester. Was this attack imminent, and what, if any, proof exists to prove that? Now, I pressed the National Security Advisor earlier today on whether or not they would be releasing and declassifying the intelligence that prompted the president's decision. He says that's still under consideration. Lester.
All right, Kristen Welker at the White House. As we watch these developments occur, we'll have much more on this breaking news throughout the night on this NBC station and on MSNBC on cable and at NBCnews.com. But now some stations will return to nightly news. Others will return to local programming. For now, I'm Lester Holt, NBC News, New York.